Hello and welcome to the continuation of the topic for prototyping. So let's now continue our discussion and discuss the advantages and disadvantages of paper prototypes. So for paper prototypes, we can in the previous video, we say that it can produce cheap and simple and quick to produce and quick to modify. Therefore, madasig na siya. We can create paper prototypes as fast as we can. So you can sketch this in minutes, just why paper works so well for testing lots of ideas. So you can draw a prototype quickly, diba? And if that prototype does not suit your application, so pwede nyo siya ma-scrap and then start again. Start on a different idea. And then the next advantage is inexpensive. So ang materials mo na gamitan diri is a marker or ball pen or pencil and your paper. So this makes the process cheap and accessible. The next is next advantage is team building. So team building, since you are collaborating, diba, on creating a prototype on an idea, we can say that most of the time ang prototyping na siya is a collaborative effort. So ga-share na kamo sa ideas on how your application will look, on how your application will work. So sa paper prototypes siya, so kay ang ideas or concept of your application na siya. So you need to be you need to collaborate, diba, in creating these ideas. And last is documentation. So team members can keep physical copies of paper prototypes, notes, introduced for quick reference during future iterations. So meron na kamo sang physical nga copy for your documentation, so in case you will refer on the next level of prototype, diba? So you can check on the papers that you've written. Okay, so for the disadvantages naman of using paper prototypes, first is this is unrealistic. Diba? So it does not look like the actual application. So paper prototypes will never be more than hand-drawn representations of a digital product. So, asahan sila sa drawing. So when you try to present this to a stakeholder, most likely hindi na sila although understand nila ang flow, pero hindi na sila ma-satisfy. So, and then false positives. So sometimes paper prototypes don't validate ideas properly. So what seems like a good idea on paper might not work effectively in a digital wireframe. So in order for the idea on paper, diba, to be implemented, so makadto siya na sa next step of your prototype. Then last is no guts reaction. So meaning, ang reaction ni from your stakeholders. So paper prototypes rely on the user's imagination, adding a break between seeing the stimulus and responding to it. Doon hindi tani ka-interact properly si users. So doon lang, doon gina-explore na siyang ideas. Considering these advantages and disadvantages, so gina-recommend siya si paper prototyping only during the early stage design. So muna gining pinakauna nga obrahon on the design phase. So once you move from paper to digital, there shouldn't be any reason to revisit the hand sketch prototypes for the same designs or user flows. So that's it for paper prototyping. Let's proceed to digital prototyping. So as the name suggests, digital, so this is made digitally. So si paper kay paper prototype, so ging-ubra na siya in papers or physical papers. Digital prototyping gives conceptual design, engineering, manufacturing, and sales, marketing departments the ability to virtually explore a complete product before it's built. So this is from your Wikipedia na definition sang digital prototyping. So we have a keyword there, virtually explore. So they can explore the functionalities of your application. So compared to sa pen or paper na prototype, so they cannot properly explore. So when your paper sketch is ready, so moving on to this type, diba? To create a digital prototype. So this should be a digital blueprint of your application. So we can say that this is our unexciting part of the design process. So see digital prototype, so start to resemble the final product, allowing teams to test and validate ideas. So validate ideas in the sense that they can test the actual functions. And then there are two types of digital prototypes. There is a low fidelity and then high fidelity. So when we say low fidelity sa digital prototypes, this utilizes wireframes. So in the previous slides, ngaging pasahin ko sa inyo. So let's check here. So this one. So makita natin sa middle, di ba? So this is a low fidelity mangyapon, but this is made digitally na siya. So this is considered as your wireframes. While the high fidelity naman, so this is ga-implement siya using mockups. So ang almost similar na nga prototype, the application is called a mockup. When we say digital prototyping, so we have the advantages over the paper prototyping. So since this is a new step na siya, so we can say that in digital prototyping, users or stakeholders can feel or can properly interact with the application, with the prototype. So testing with high fidelity digital prototypes lets the design teams see how users really interact with the final product. So thus effectively iron out any usability issues. So with pen or paper prototyping, so ideas na siyang polish. So here, in the digital prototyping, especially with the high fidelity na prototyping, so you can check for usability issues na. So we can say that the digital prototyping are flexible. So we can say for as early as possible, diba, kung available na si digital prototype, so pwede na yung ka-start ng testing. So, pwede na siya pwede ka naka-test, magubra ka based on wireframes, diba? Ipa-check mo dayon to sa sa users or sa clients. Then, makatagan sila sa feedback as soon as available na si wireframes. And then si speed. So, this is not the speed, diba, when it comes on developing your prototype. So, while paper prototypes might be the fastest way to test ideas, digital prototypes are the quickest way to test usability issues. So, kasi digital prototype, so refer na siya sa interaction. So, realistic interactions. So, once a product gets to the engineering stage, changes cost significantly more time and money. So, that is the disadvantages. Now, let's move on sa disadvantages. So, although na-meet na siya si digital prototyping, so there are some flaws man nga need na ma-overcome. So for the first one is the learning curve. So before you can build a prototype, you'll need to understand the software. So which is why product teams often use PowerPoint instead of a specialized design tool. So when you try to learn Figma or Canva or your Adobe XD, so you had some time learning how to create a simple na screen, implement a button, etc. So you have to learn. You have to dedicate time to learn on how to utilize the software. So in order to create a wireframe or a mockup. And then as you move from low to high fidelity, so time and labor costs increase. So this may also refer sa depende man sa software nga gigamit nyo kung mabayad man siya or wala. You see, low-fidelity prototype allows research teams to outline the basic user flows and information architecture. So, ang structures sa inyong on how information is displayed on the user. Then the flow, so basic flow from one page to another. High-fidelity prototypes goes into more detail, testing user interfaces, interactions, and how usability participants interact with the product. So, amo na siya ang difference for revisit lang ang difference with low fidelity and high fidelity. And then last, so we have another type sang prototyping. So this one is ginobra ni siya using the HTML and JavaScript prototyping. So this is rare occasions lang. Teams might build HTML and JavaScript prototypes to get more accurate results. So do almost do product na gid ni siya. Diba? So product na siya. So ang fidelity yan is much higher, diba? Ang functionality is almost the same na gid or very similar. So ang downside lang dire to this approach is that coding comes with considerable time and technical cost. Kung doon nag-code ka na gidya. So invest nga sa previous sa digital prototyping, nagamit siya ng software, so no coding required. So with this type of prototype, so doon nag-code kita using HTML and JavaScript. So let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages of using the HTML prototypes. So we can say that this is almost the same as your final product. So this provides participants with the accurate model of the final product. And then, the technical foundation also for the final product. So building an HTML prototype provides researchers with a valuable research tool to provide developers with the foundations for building the final product. So when you say foundations, so ari na ang base nga code nga gamiton nila. And then also with the tools man be mga libraries na pwede nila magamit. And then we can say this is platform agnostic. So you can test your prototype on virtually any operating system, and the user won't need to run outside software. Wala. So, meaning, si user pwede na siya matest on any devices as long as may web browser siya. As kasi most of the OS operating systems have their own web browser. We can say that appos ni kay user nga mag-test. So, using the HTML na prototype. Here we have some disadvantages. And first is we have the dependent on the designer skill level. So HTML prototype is only good as your ability to code. So since do nag-code na gid man, so nag-umpisa na sa development process. The poorly coded prototypes could interact or could introduce usability issues that don't have anything to do with the UX design. So dependent na sa code. Then this inhibits creativity. So coding takes time and focuses to build a usable prototype. Designers must not achieve the same level of innovation or creativity as using a familiar design tool. So may disadvantage siya. Depende man na sa developer kung nakasawa man siya code or para mag-ubra sa prototype. So very rarely lang siya ginagamit si HTML and JavaScript and prototyping. So most of the time, gastap na kita sa digital prototyping. So once mayroon na kita sang mockups, mapalit siya na si mockups, and then that's the time masap na ang design and then proceed na sa development. Okay, so now let's move on to the last topic. So the importance of prototyping. So importance when it comes on application development. So this is an essential part of the user experience. So design that usually comes after ideation. So where you and your team have created and selected ideas that can solve a user's needs. So in prototyping, You craft a simple experimental model of your proposed product so that you can check how well it matches what users want through the feedback they give. Muna yun. So, prototyping, kung makreate ka sa initial design, ihatag mo sa users, matag sila sa feedback, and then you will accept that feedback. So, you should consider prototyping from early on by using paper prototyping if appropriate. Pwede na ang sa paper prototyping pa lang, pwede ka nakahatag. But, since si paper prototyping is more on ideas, so most likely, depende na siya. So, kung ano man feedback ang mahatag sa user. So, si prototyping ultimately improves the user experience. So, user experience when they are using your application. Product owners have a better idea of the challenges they face, so they can offer precise feedback to developers on how to improve the product. So, when product owners sa mga company, diba, kung matry man nila na ang gamit yung application ay via prototyping or via the prototype, so they can see, di ba, kung ano man right away ang mga problems na ma-encounter nila. Especially sa initial design. So their feedback enables developers to make iterations or enables designers to make iterations to the prototype and improve the outcome of the application. So, ang best part about prototyping is that developers, product owners, clients, and end users can get deeply involved in the complete process. From ideation to implementation. So, muna ang by giving the feedback. Appropriate feedback on improving the user experience of your application. And then si prototype removes all guesswork and helps developers understand what the end users want. Kaya hindi lang na pwede si developers na mag-decide kung ano nang gusto sa users. This is achieved na siya via the feedback they've given to your prototype. And this feedback can also give users satisfaction that the application has been developed according to their expectations and leads to higher usage acquisition, retention, and loyalty. So in the end, diba? So kung makita na ni user ang prototype, so they can expect something this application will be good, o diba? So kaya nanghatag sila sa feedback, diba? And may improve na nila over time. So with prototyping, so gina-identify and fix flaws at an early stage. So when we say early stage, so wala pa galap sa development. Prototyping helps users identify and fix flaws in the application at an early stage. So considering that users are actively involved in the prototyping process, they can identify the flaws even before the development begins and reduce the risk of failures at a later stage. So, gina-enable man ang developers or designers to recognize missing functionalities and include them in a developing and user-friendly application. So, kung may mga ideas pa ka mo wala na implement, diba, on your planning manda. So, you can add it here on the design phase on your prototype. So by identifying and fixing flaws early, developers can save time and cost on rework and focus on launching a product soon, or launching a finished product soon. So the last importance of prototyping is that it accelerates the pace of development. Meaning, gadasig siya. Hapos lang. So once a prototype is approved, so developers get clarity on how to proceed with the development. Diba? Doon makita na nila on what are the things that they need to do, what are the components of the application that they need to do. So mabukod na nila into different components. Developers can quickly develop applications based on the prototype. So ginabasyan na nila ang prototype, get it tested, fix the bugs, and release it to the users for the feedback when using the application itself. So once they receive feedback, so they can make adjustments to the application. So so these adjustments so related na siya sa coding, so mga bugs man siya sa more on the testing na siya nga phase. So having a software prototype simplifies the job of a developer as they can save time on the reworks and focus on improving the application and launching it quickly to the market. So that is the importance of prototyping. So when it comes to developing applications. Okay, so that's it for this lecture, diba? For the unit prototyping. So thank you for listening and watching, and see you on the next one.